HTML editor and content sets. Here we can see both. We can see an HTML editor. This is something we've used throughout the course a lot of times. For example, when we designed an email in our notifier system task, we've used the HTML editor. And there's all kinds of other places where we've also used this content to add images, text, links, anything practically that we want to add to form. We can add it with this HTML editor. Now we can also create tabs or sets of contents. How do we create a set of content? Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to select the set, we're going to create the tabs, and once we've done that, inside of each tab, we're going to display any content we want. In this example, we have some text. Here we also have some text. Here we have a kitten. So basically, we can add whatever contents we want. It's almost better to see all of this in the platform. So instead of going through the slides, I'm just going to go directly to the platform. Here we're going to see in this page that we were designing different examples. We've added a couple spaces. We've got this space here to the left and this other space here towards the right. Now we're going to add some HTML content here, and over here we're going to add a few tabs with content. Okay, so we want to click through those tabs and we want the content to be displayed down here. In order to do that, I'm going to the configuration page, and the first thing I want to do is create in this space some HTML content. So all I have to do is click here, select the option HTML, and then enter and select any HTML content I want. I can create a new HTML content, and then I could click here on content and start adding whatever I want, some texts, some images, some, I don't know, some tables, lines, whatever. We've already gone through this, so I'm not really going to stop here and give you guys more information because we already know how to work with this. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab an existing HTML content, for example, this one here. I'll save and exit. And let's see the example. Let's see what we can see here. This is the content of our HTML, so we can see the result. Now I'm going to change it for another one. All I have to do is click here. I can modify this content by clicking here and saying, well, I don't want this content. I want to change it for something else. Anyways, I'm not going to modify this. I'm going to select a different content. Here we have a content. It's called animated GIF. I'm going to select it. Now let's see the result. Okay, here we have the result. There is one little detail that we have here in this HTML content, and it's that the images are actually responsive. Let me show this to you. So basically here we have a page, and depending on the size of the page, we can see the image is going to be smaller, or if the size gets bigger, the image starts growing. Okay. And then here we have something that's quite inconvenient because the size of this space is not according to content. I don't like that, to chop off my image. So I'm going to show you guys how I created these responsive images in the HTML editor. And besides, I'm going to change this so that the content is, well, the size is according to content. So the first thing I'm going to do is enter the space, change this option here. I don't want it to be 500 pixels. I want it to be according to content, and I'll save. So now it's just going to display the content. Well, the size is actually going to grow according to the content. Now I'm going to enter this HTML editor, and we're going to see how we did the trick in order to make these images responsive. So I click here on content, and we can see the images appear really large here. They're occupying 100% of the screen. Here we have one of the images. If I double click on it, I can see instead of having a fixed size in pixels, what I have here is a width in percentage, and I took off the height. So I could actually change this. For example, I could put, I don't know, 150, or let's make it smaller. Let's make it just 50. So now it's always going to occupy half of the space. So if I click OK, we can see it's occupying half of the available space because we said we want it to be 50%. We have to be careful not to ruin the aspect ratio. So if I mark an option here, for example, I mark 500, and I'm not careful because here maybe I might add 200, what's going to happen is that my image is going to be looking quite funky. We don't want this to happen. So we always want to keep the aspect ratio between the width and the height. Well, in this example, the image is actually square, so it's quite easy. But if I don't do this, if I don't lock this, maybe I could change this up here and it changes down here. But if I don't lock it, then we might get a very funky result. And we don't want this, okay? So when we're going to add percentages, we want to say, well, up here we want 50%. I have to remember to put the percentage up here, and down here I'm not going to put anything. There we go. So it occupies half of the screen. Let's see the result. So let's see what happens when I go back to my page here. And well, I'm going to refresh. So here we can see the image occupies exactly half of the available space. This one down here is still occupying 100% of the space. And both of them are still growing and they're shrinking. We can see how they get smaller and bigger. But this one is always going to occupy half of the space. Anyways, I'm going to leave it as it was. I want both of them to occupy half of the space. I'm going to take off this color. I just added it so we could very clearly see where the content is being displayed. But now I can actually take it off, and I'm going to change the size again. So instead of being 50, I want it to be 100. Okay. And now down here, this one's already 100%. So if I double click, we can see it already has 100. All right. Well, with this, we know how to use the HTML editor. We've also learned this little trick to make responsive images. And now we're going to start creating some tabs here. In order to create the tabs, I want to select the type of content. It's called set. Now, when I select set, I can enter here. As always, I can select an existing set. I can create a new one. I'm just going to create a new one. I'm going to call it demo. Okay, here I can indicate the tab height. For example, I want it to be 40 pixels. I can put some space between the tabs, for example, 2 pixels. And I could say the content is going to be 150. Since I'm going to drop it into this space here of 150, well, it's responsive, so it could be larger than 150, but we know the minimum space is going to be 150. So I'm also going to put 150 here. And now all I have to do is select the style for these buttons, because the tabs need a style the same as any other button panel. Now I can select any style I have in my gallery, or I could create a new one. I'm just going to grab this existing style. Let's see what happens. I'll save. Well, I'm going to save an exit. I'm just going to leave it like this. And now if I go to the preview, we're actually not going to see anything. Why? Because I didn't really create any tab yet. All I did is I created the style and I created the type of content. But when we enter, oops, I went to the element list. I need to enter here. Now, when we enter here in the set that we just created, we can see we didn't create any tabs. So I'm going to create a couple tabs. I'm going to click here and I'm going to say this one is called tab 1, for example. And here I'm going to indicate the size. So if it's 150 pixels and we want 2 tabs, for example, then let's say we want 75. But actually we indicated that we want 2 pixels between the tabs. I'm going to put 74. So each tab is going to have 74 pixels wide. We have tab 1. I'm going to create the next one. So this one's going to be called tab 2. And here we're also going to put 74. Later on, we can play around with these sizes if we don't get it right from the beginning. Sometimes we don't get everything pixel perfect from the beginning. Okay, I'm going back to the page, to the preview. I update, and here we can see the tabs. They're not looking too good. This one's transparent. This one's orange or yellowish orange. And okay, they do work. Okay, now I have the second tab selected. Now I have the third tab selected. But I don't really like the look and feel. For me, it's not really looking very good. So I'm going to change this a little bit. I'm going back to the configuration. And I'm going back to the tabs. And here we can see, even though I indicated a size, if I don't mark this option, it's not going to apply it. It's still going to be applying an automatic size. That's why the size is automatically added according to the content of the text. I'm going to change that. I want this to be on this option here, indicate. I'm going to the other tab and I'm going to do the exact same thing. Now, we've changed the size a little bit. but still the style I don't like. I need a different style. So I'm going to go here to style. We're not going to go into the details of how to create a new style because we've already done this during the course. We've created several button panels. We've created buttons for our forms. We've already gone through this, so I'm just going to directly select an existing one. Let me see if this one looks better. So now we've selected a different style. Okay, I think this is going to look much better now. So we've got tab 1, and if I click on tab 2, okay, this is fine. Okay, maybe it's not perfect. Obviously here we have all these hideous colors, but as I mentioned, it's to help you guys view the spaces much better and understand what's happening. Okay, I'm going to enter again, and now in each one of these tabs I want to add some content. So we've got tab 1, and what content do I want to display on tab 1? Well, I'll have to click here and decide what type of content I want to add. I can add any type of content. I could add an external page. I could add another page that I've created here. I could add an HTML content, single element, an element list. So there's all kinds of different contents. I'm going to select an HTML content. And here I could select an existing HTML content. I could also create a new one. Let's create a new one. So I'll click here and I'll add whatever. For example, I'll add an image that I just downloaded from internet. Okay. That's the image I've selected. Now, I'm not going to add any content to the tab 2. This is just a test. So I'm going back to see the result. And here we can see the image. I don't really like this image. I don't want it, but it's just a test. So we've added some content here. I could add some more content down here. I could also add text, for example, whatever I want. Anyways, I'm going back and I'm going to change this. I'm going to say, well, in each tab, I'm going to add some different content. For example, here on tab 1, I'm going to add this HTML content called LG banner. And on tab 2, I'm going to add some other content. It's also going to be HTML. And it's going to be called sharp. Okay. I'll save and exit. Now both of them have content. Let me check and see the look and feel. I'll update here. Okay. So we've got both tabs. If I click here, I can see this content. If I click here, I can see this other content. Okay, basically it's the same image. All we're doing is changing the color so we can see how we're moving from one content to the other. Okay, well, now that I've done this, I can realize that there's not enough space. I still have a weird background here. I would like to add some more space here at the top. I would like these movies also to have some space here at the top. So I want to add some air so the spaces can actually breathe. And besides, I don't know, I have a feeling that here we don't have very much space. We're chopping off the image. So I want to take care of that too. I'm going to try to fix all of these little details. In order to do this, I'm going back to the configuration. I'm going to click here and I'm going to say I want a margin at the top of, let's say, 20 pixels. And I'll save and exit. And I'm going to do the same thing with the element list. I want 20 pixels at the top. And now let's see if this, perfect. Okay, now I like it better. Okay, so if here we have maybe an action bar, some buttons, and here we have a logo or whatever, at least I have some space here. But still, this is too close to the border. I don't like it either. And the space here for this image is too small. So probably these images are larger than 150 pixels, and that's why we're not really displaying the entire image. So I'm going to have to take care of that. Besides, we can see it's also chopping the image off here at the bottom. So the first thing I'm going to do is say I don't want this to be a fixed size. I want it to be by content. I'm going to change the size. So maybe 150 is not enough, or maybe 10% is not really good enough. So let me change this. Let me say instead of 10%, I'm going to add maybe a 15%. I'll save and exit. And now 15 plus 100 plus 10 doesn't add up. Okay, this is a bit too much. So if we have 15 here we should have maybe 75. plus 10, that would be 100. Okay, so I'm going to put 75 here. Okay, so now all these three spaces add up to 100. Let me see the result. Okay, so now I've got much more space here, but still my image is not displaying correctly. So I'm going to go back to these tabs, and I'm going to the configuration of the sets. And here it says that the content width is 150. I'm going to change it a little bit. Maybe 200 would be enough. And down here, I'm also going to change the content. So maybe these tabs should also be a little bit larger. I'm going to put maybe 95 pixels. Let's see what happens. Obviously, the first time we work with this, it's a bit difficult to get the sizes right. We don't have so much experience. But once we start working with pages and forms and we have some experience, this is obviously it gets easier. So there is a bit of a learning curve. Okay, apparently we are showing the entire image. The tabs are a little bit too big. And actually I created a gap that's way too big here. So I'm gonna have to make it a little bit smaller. Here we have a very small gap and here we have a very large gap. So I'm gonna try to fix this now. First of all, I'm gonna make these tabs a teensy little bit smaller. Not much, because we can see it's just a couple pixels here. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to these tabs and okay, in here, I don't want these tabs to be 95. Let's say we can make them 94. So now we have 1 pixel less on one tab. And on the other tab, I'm going to take 2 pixels off. So I'm going to put 93 here. Let's see what happens. It might be too much, but anyways, I can always come back and leave it until it's pixel perfect. Okay, let's update. That's okay for me. Okay, I think it's more or less the correct size. Now I want some space here before the banner, before these banners, and I don't want this space to be as large. So I'm going back, I'm going to the space here, and I'm going to say I want some space to the left of, let's say, 10 pixels. Besides, I would also like some space below these tabs. So I'm going to save first, and now I'm going to go back to the tabs, and I'm going to add some space underneath those tabs. So here we've got tab 1. I can say I want the content to appear 2 pixels away from the top. And I'm going to do the same thing in tab 2. So I go back here, I put 2, and I save and exit. Okay, I've already finished with this. There might be some adjustments to be done, but basically the last thing I want to do is make the gap a little bit smaller between the tabs and the element list. And maybe I should give some more space to this HTML content. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to change this. So instead of being 15%, I'm going to say it's going to be maybe 13%. And over here, I'm going to give it the other 2 pixels. So I'm going to say this is 12%. And let's see what happens. Okay, I'm going to refresh. I'm going to update this page. And here we can see the result. It's starting to look better, but still I don't have space over here. And I still have this purple color I would like to take off. So I'm going back to the page. I'm going to take off the purple color. And I'm going to enter this space here. Actually, the margin I have, let's go back and see it. The margin I have here, I think it's still bigger than this one over here. So I still would like to make it a little bit smaller. So here I'm going to put 12% and I'm going to put 13% over here. Let's see what happens. So I'll put 12. Now over here I'm going to put 13. We can see the sum of all these percentages is 100. Okay, now besides this, I wanted a little bit of margin towards the right. So I'm going to put here 10 pixels. Way too much, 100. Okay, 10 pixels, and we're going to update and see the result. Okay, now it's looking better. We have the 2 tabs, we have the banner, we have some space here at the right. We also have some space here at the left. We added these 2 pixels down here. Okay, so for me, this already looks like a more professional result. So I think it's okay like this. We can continue. Exercise 403, part 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.